There we go. So I posted both. I have a version here, the Tomar Devorah that I use, and the soft copy of it I put on a PDF in the WhatsApp as well as the email. So if you want it, that's one version to follow along, but it's all Hebrew. The English one, we have the Sefaria that I've sent also the link to that. This is a good version because it's easy read. It has vowels, nakudos, and it gives us without too much complication the translation of what the Ramak wants to say. Now we finished a few weeks ago. We finished the first chapter. Last week we did the first of the second chapter. In the PDF, it would be on page Samach, which is equivalent to 60, which is the second of the midos of the second chapter. And on the Sefaria, we would be holding let's find the Tomar Devorah here. I have to bring that up. Tomar Devorah, chapter 2. Hey, Judith. So we're starting the second of the two. So it's in the PDF that I sent. It's page Samach. And so the difference between the first and the second chapter. So the hold on. In the English we have here. I'm not sure why it's not showing up on me. English. And just gonna put in the. Yeah, so in the chapter 2, they go into the difference between the midos of Keser and the functionality of Keser, meaning we took the 13 attributes of Hashem. Again, we have to remember something, that there's the point of the 13 attributes of Hashem is beyond the letter of the law. It means there's when Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to achieve tshuva, wanted to achieve kapara, atonement, for the Chet Egel, for the golden calf, and other times that we need it, and we use it all the time. Throughout the month of Tishrei, Elul, it's all about the 13 attributes. What's the idea of the 13 attributes? By definition, the 13 attributes of mercy is to reach levels that are beyond right and wrong, beyond punishment, to cleanse ourselves. So that there's the powerful tool of the 13 attributes of mercy, both of Moshe and of Micha. The Ramak is based on the 13 attributes of Micha. We talk about it in the Tashlach Tefillah prayer when we go and throw our sins out to the sea, but it's based on the same idea. Now, in the 13 attributes of mercy, there's the functionality of the 13 attributes, and that's what we learned in the first chapter of how one should look at Hashem and emulate Hashem, not just in their service to Hashem, but also mainly the point of the Tomar Devorah is our interactions with other people. And to look from Hashem, how God goes beyond the letter of the law in all the methods that we talked about, where a person could be wronged, a person could have challenges, very hard challenges in continuing a relationship with another person, whatever the dynamics of the relationship is, whether it's family or friends, and to overcome, so to say, your own honor and maybe how your initial reaction is to the situation, and to implement mercy into the relationship, whereas the idea is beyond the letter of the law. In the second chapter, he's going into what seems like, from my understanding, is not so much the attributes, the midos, but the functionality of the tools that we have. Like, for instance, he's focusing on the first chapter was the first chapter that we learned last week was about anava, to be humble. That's the foundation of everything. Humility or the lack of humility is where things are where there's a problem. Where a person lacks humility, but by definition, humility is beyond judgment. What does that mean, beyond judgment? Din, by definition, is right and wrong. Din is not evil; it's just right and wrong. When a person says 1 + 1 = 2, that's judgment. So if you hurt me, I don't want to have a relationship with you. But part of what is getting hurt is self-awareness. I feel that, again, we've discussed it in previous times, where a person obviously doesn't have to endanger themselves, or unhealthy relationships that's really going to bring a person down, is obviously, we're not talking about that. We're talking about within a situation, a framework where you have the choice to continue or not continue, or to be friendly or not to be friendly, or how you respond. But the foundation, he says, is that we have to have anava. You have to have humility. When a person has humility, so kind of it clears your head to be able to have a little bit more perspective of what's happening in this relationship, and less pain personally, so not so much pain, but less offense. When you have humility, so your space isn't taking up all the space of the room. The famous story of the chassid who went to the Tzemach Tzedek, who said that they're stepping on me all over the synagogue. So the Tzemach Tzedek answered him, who asked you to spread yourself all over the synagogue? Wherever people step, they're stepping on you. So it's the same idea, which is that humility is, don't spread yourself all over the room. Wherever someone moves, they're poking you or hitting you or offending you. So that's the first of the attributes that we learned last week. The next 7 of them, he has 8 in the second chapter, are going to be functionality of the tools that we have mainly with our thought, our speech, the impressions we give off, the expressions. Expression is a big deal. He talks about expressions. When you look at a person, the person can be saying nice words, but their expression doesn't reflect the words that they're saying. And you could look at them and they look angry, and they're trying to talk nice, but you look at them and they just look angry at you, and that kind of defeats the purpose of what they're trying to say. So he goes into that you should be a person that gives off a vibe of calmness and goodness. And that's the point of the second chapter, that it's not just your attitude to things, but how do people perceive how do people read you? What's your body language? What's your body language talking? What's your body language giving off? And that's really the point of the second chapter. Now, after he goes into these 2 chapters, so seemingly, right, what we finish with all that is that this is kind of a tall order. He finishes off saying is that I know this is very hard. So how do we actually do it? Means after he tackles how you should be, then the reader is like, okay, I hear what you're saying. I'm not there. Like, hey Justin, how do I get to that space? And in order for I to get to that space, he goes into a strategy of how you actually deal with the goings and comings of life. But now we're still in the second chapter. So on page 60, and those who are following along in the Sefaria, it's chapter 2, the second one. So it says like this: Hashniya, the second idea a person should, and these are much shorter than the first ones, and they're easier also. And I want to say something else that it seems a little repetitive. He's going to seem like he's repeating himself, but if you think about it, really he's not. And there's different ways that we repeat our behavior also. So the Ramak says like this: Machshavtoi tidmel machshavas hakeser. You should align your thinking. Machshava means your thought process, to the thinking of keser. Keser again is the level of God that's beyond that is the 13 attributes. Keser is the crown. The crown is, so to say, outside the king. The king starts already with the rules and regulations, but there's the crown that reaches beyond, so to say, right and wrong. Keser in Chassidus is known as pleasure and ratzon and will. That God, the world was created. The structure comes from that God takes pleasure in our behavior, and because He takes pleasure in our behavior, there's sometimes that's where you could affect tshuva. Means if you affect that, God sees the bigger picture and what's happening, so He's not going to punish, or He's not going to hold a grudge, so to say. So here in the second, he says you have to align your thinking to the thinking of the level of the crown. Means the thinking of the level that goes beyond judgment, that is taking pleasure in man's in the human being's behavior, that has a will of creation. So he says, like he says over here in the translation, Hainu, that means shamachshava shel adam, the thinking of a person, sricha liyos k'may machshava shel keser. You have to think as the keser thinks. Means that the crown thinks beyond the king. Hainu lachshev, which means, what does that translate actually? Lachshev raktov. Only be a person who thinks good thoughts. Or lachshev machshavas Torah, or think holy thoughts, think thoughts of Torah. Or lachshev eichle heitiv lacher. Think about how you could do good to other people. Means you could use your thinking about all kinds of things. You could, first of all, think about inappropriate things. You could think about all kinds of things. But how do you think about only positive things? So that's what you have to do, like God. God only is preoccupied constantly, either in holiness or in being kind to people or holy thoughts. But there's no evil or wasteful thoughts. He says like this: just like the wisdom of God within the crown never stops thinking good thoughts, and on top of that, evil doesn't enter the thinking process of God. That's a huge thing, by the way, because we take for granted when we say that God is chafetz chesed, God is kindness. Kindness is we decide what's good and what's bad. Why does something bad happen, right? So when we look at sometimes evil in the world, we think, does God have evil thoughts? I mean, where's the source of this evil? So the Ramak says you have to know, but there's nothing bad ever entering into the Keser. So even if there's manifest in the world things that are bad, that's the whole system of creation where God gives free choice, and there's the bigger picture. We don't understand everything, but the concept of an evil thought never enters the level of the crown of Hashem. Why? The crown is absolute compassion. And compassion is not judgment. When a person is nice to a person who's good, that's not compassion, that's reaction. There's reaction and compassion. It's not the same thing. Compassion means where there's things are not perfect, but I'm compassionate. So the Ramak says that the Keser is only Rachman, only compassion. Whether the person is good or not, there's no evil thought that enters there. Not just evil thought. It continues. Ve'ein sham din, there's no judgment. Lei shum koishi klal, nothing difficult. No negativity. The Keser is absolute goodness. And it's constantly like that. Lei tifsek, he says, never ends. And he's trying to tell us, I mean, yeah, which is an amazing exercise. Again, these are it's not so much about the midos now, but about our functionality, our tools that we've been given. One of the tools that we've been given, we know that Tanya says that even the thought process is a lavush, is a garment. A garment is a tool. So we have a garment of our thought process, and we could choose what to think about. We can't always choose what pops in our head, but we could choose to elaborate, how long we're going to think about it. We have a bad thought, evil thought, inappropriate thought, whatever that thought is, we have the ability to push it out. And we're given that choice to push it out or not. The tzaddik doesn't have it, but the regular person has thoughts that enter their mind. We could judge people, we could be harsh to people, we could look at a person and have all kind of thoughts that are inappropriate, right? We say this is, this, even the good of the person we could try to figure out and say, well, that person has an agenda. There's so many levels where our thinking could get us in trouble, so to say. So he says that just like in God, he says no bad enters there. It's only full of compassion, no judgment. What's judgment? Not judging people. There's no koishi, nothing difficult. That's how we have to have our mind. Our mind, we've been given a gift by God to be able to think about things, machshava. Use that to be a thinking of positive things. Don't allow things that are negative to come in there. Doesn't mean that you're not, he's going to say, he's going to get into it. That doesn't mean you're not a person who's a realist. You don't have, it's not that you're lacking reality, but you don't get involved in it. And today, in the world we're living in today, there's so much non-stop information being fed to us constantly on our phones or what we're looking at. There's so much anywhere. There's so much access to information. Our minds are we have 30 seconds to think of one piece of information and then something else comes. So you have to really take control of what enters that space. It says, let's continue with the main. He says, Kach Adam, so to a person. Tia machshavtoi, their thinking. Pnuya means empty, void. Mikol davar mechur, from anything disgusting. Now, this disgusting could be anything. Apply it each person to what they know to themselves. Things that are inappropriate, or things that are wrong, judging, or things are. Mechur is a loaded word, but could it be applied to anything negative? Each person knows in their own what that means to them. Just like the foundation of wisdom of Torah. Keduma means the origin of Torah. And there's no lack of Torah. It means this constant holiness and goodness in the thinking of the Keser. And anything that's mechur, that's disgusting or inappropriate, doesn't have space in the thinking process. They say a story I heard once when I was getting smicha. I heard a story from my Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Levin. He said that I think he was talking about Rabbi Avad Yosef, Olav Shalom. That Rabbi Avad Yosef, who had a photographic memory, couldn't remember a telephone number. He wouldn't, like if you told him, I mean, he had photographic memory, but he couldn't remember a telephone number. So someone, I guess, once asked him, like, what's the situation? I mean, you can remember every law of the Torah and every word of Rashi, but you can't remember a telephone number. I just told you the number 3 minutes ago. He says, listen, even a person that has a photographic memory has a limited amount of space. And I'm not using my space for telephone numbers. A telephone number I could write down, so that's fine. He's not entering. It means you could choose where you enter into that space. So even though he had a photographic memory, and it wouldn't be difficult for him to remember a telephone number, he never remembered a telephone number because he chose that's not part of what he wants to enter into his thinking process. So he didn't remember the telephone number. So we choose what we could apply our machshava to. Again, a machshava is like Tanya says, is a levush, is a garment, and you could decide how you dress that garment and what you dress that garment, what is wearing that garment, and you choose what you apply your thinking to. So he says, kach, there, so too. Lo yifna el shum piniya chutz machshavas hatayra. A person should not apply any, shouldn't fill any void of their thinking outside of the thinking of Torah. Right? That's what Rav Yosef, he wouldn't apply even a telephone number. V'lachshev, or to think begadlus hakel, whether it's Torah or to think about God, the greatness of God, upulasav, and God's work, so to say, effectiveness in this world, hatayvus, which is all good, or lehetiv, or how you could be good to other people, v'kayoytze. Means a person, you could think, you're not supposed to not think, but apply your thinking only to godliness, goodness, helping others, and apply how God thinks always to help others. Klole shel davar, this is the rule, he says. Lo yikones zor ubatal b'machshavtei. 2 things. One is, don't allow to enter a zor, a foreigner. A foreigner has no space. Meaning, when we say a foreigner, we mean something that's foreign to godliness. We're not talking about to think about someone who needs help. We're talking about a person, a thought that is foreign, or something batal, something also that's not productive. Batal means, a lot of times they say about the Rebbe Rashab, that he once said, I mean, this may sound a little interesting, but the Rebbe Rashab, whose birthday is coming up, he says that he said that he sometimes was so to say relieved when he had to go to the restroom because he couldn't think thoughts of Torah, and because it was so pressurizing for him to be so focused the whole time that he just needed sometimes a little bit of to relax his head. And we know the great mind of the Rebbe Rashab, his Chassidus is the deepest of all Chassidus. So here we're talking about a giant of a person of intellect, not just of emotion and love for Hashem and love for Klal Yisrael, but also in the depth. His mind was preoccupied constantly in Torah and Chassidus. I mean, he was for years he would think about a concept, and he would talk about it for years. Ayin Beis, Samach Vav, these are Hamsheichim, these are continuations of thought of Chassidus that went on for years on sometimes a single subject. And even he said he needed sometimes to relax his mind, but while he was functioning, he couldn't relax his mind. He's either preoccupied in helping someone or serving God or thinking Torah. But even he, as a great Rebbe, says that when he wasn't allowed to think Torah because he was out in the restroom, that was his a few minutes to catch himself. So he says you shouldn't even have batal machshavti, not just zar. Batal means a wasteful thought it's not productive. Wasteful thought one could translate in many ways, right? A lot of times we spend a lot of our time analyzing or preoccupying ourselves that have no bottom line to it. It's just we just want to be part of the conversation, but it's good to be informed, and we never know when we need information. Not everything that sometimes information that we've heard years ago or a week ago could be useful later. But then a lot of times we waste Devorah B'Telem, things that are wasteful. So he says, don't waste your mind with things that are wasteful, that there's nothing's going to come from it. And if nothing's going to come from it, again, this is very intense. That's why I'm saying that after the first 2 chapters, he goes into, okay, this is a person who excels at life. What do we do with the practical person who's can't just relax their mind when they go to the restroom once or twice a day, and need to sit down and just read a book that has absolutely nothing to do with it. I remember someone that I knew very, very well that would come back from a hard day's work and needed to watch the silliest TV shows afterwards, because it was so intense the day at work and everything that he was doing, and he was giving a lot of tzedakah, meeting people, and his business was took a lot of his energy, that he just needed to downtime. And he would come home. We remember that he would come home and he would we were growing up, and he was my grandfather. He would come home and he would need to watch a TV show just to relax. So there's it's hard. I mean, this is a hard, tall order not to have a batel machshavtei. And he says, V'zu haisa, and now we see what level this is. What level is a person that doesn't enter anything negative into the thinking process or anything wasteful in their thinking process. So now we know what kind of person we're talking about. V'zoi haisa mailis Rab Shimon v'chaverev. This is the level of Rab Shimon bar Yochai. So we're talking about giants of old time, author of the Zohar. Ure'ei, we see that one time the Zohar tells us a story that Kishahifrid Rabbi Yossi machshavtoi ma'at, Rabbi Yossi, which was also a giant of his time, a contemporary of Rab Shimon, once his mind wandered to something not productive. Rab Shimon was very harsh with him. And so we'll read in the commentary, he says, for those who are following along in the PDF, he tells us the story. The Zohar tells us in Parshas V'Yakov that Shapam Achas, one time, Rabbi Yossi, he's born in Bistam Yonah Olam. Rabbi Yossi was thinking about just something in the world, meaning to say it wasn't something productive. But Rab Shimon, the Rabbi Yossi, so Rab Shimon bar Yochai turns to Rabbi Yossi, and he was able to realize that he was thinking these thoughts. And he says, Yoichsi, he called him Yossi, Kum v'sashtem esamar shalacha. You have to change your image. There's something that you're giving off a bad image. You're missing part of your name. You're missing part of one of the letters of who you are. Because you're thinking about worldly things. The Shechina, God is not resting on you, because he was thinking wasteful thoughts. Imagine the intensity of this. So immediately he went to study Torah. And then when he came back to Reb Shimon, Rashbi and Reb Shimon bar Yochai, he's boinin boy, looked at him, and he said, now you're complete. Not only are you complete, but your image is complete. From this we see that even Reb Shimon, Reb Yossi, who thought that wasn't Torah, how right away it affected his image and wasn't the right image. And we see from here that what the Ramak is going with is that the tools that we've been given are machshava dibur. Next one he goes into, we'll just do one more. Next one that he goes into is the forehead. That the forehead is again, we know the forehead is also, they say, I see it on your forehead. It's written on your forehead. Right? There's an expression. So these are how, what kind of message are we giving off to others? Sometimes not via communication, just by our body language. And the second chapter is that our body language shows what's going on within ourselves. So the second midah is to perfect our machshava. Again, this is on the highest level of intensity and focus, but it doesn't make it less right. It means a person who looks at it and says, this is not achievable on any level, it's way beyond me. It's possible. I know it's way beyond me personally, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that we're not holding there yet. It doesn't. Sometimes we have to know what is. It means when God gives us the machshava at its highest level, what can we do with it? Is that we could use it for only good, and therefore the how that helps us maybe in our small life, meaning to say if we're not Rabbi Yossi and we're not Reb Shimon bar Yochai, but there are times that happen all the time that we could choose right now not to think about something bad. Because when we know that that's what our thought process is for, a lot of times we may not be successful at it, but it doesn't mean that every single individual time we use our thinking process, we don't have a choice at that moment to not think about something. So let's say a thought pops into your mind, judging someone. Doesn't mean you're never not going to judge people. You're not perfect, but right now you don't have to think about it. Right now you're in control at this moment, in this thought that you want to have, to say, I don't want to think about this right now, because right now I'm in control. It's like shmir anayim, when you watch what you look at when you walk in the street. No one's perfect not to look at things you shouldn't look at, but sometimes at that moment you can make the choice. Right now, this is not something I should be looking at, and you could turn your eyes. You could make that choice right now. Doesn't mean you're perfect. Doesn't make you a tzaddik or tzaddikas. It just means that right now you exercised a good choice of where to look. And same thing, right now you've exercised what I should be thinking about, because you know that what it's expected from my thought process. When you never have the knowledge to know that this is what you can do, and this is what you should be doing. So what's the big deal? I'm not perfect, so I want to think about this right now. But when you know, okay, I'm not perfect. You're right, I'm not perfect. But my thoughts not meant to enter negative, bad, evil, whatever have you thoughts. I should only be thinking about good things. So when you tackle a single situation, you could say, I'm not going to judge the person now. Someone brings up something. I don't want to listen to this right now. I don't want to think about this right now. Or on all levels, on the scale, whatever the scale is of the thought, which is wrong for the moment. At that moment, you have a choice to make. Do you want to think about it or not? It's not going to maybe change who you are in its entirety, and doesn't mean that you're not going to think about it at another time. But right now, not. And the fact is, like it says about Torah, it says about it's brought down that Amar Shabai Machzil Mutov. It says, the Gemara says, a person asks, should a person learn Shalol Lishma, or when I learn, it says a person's supposed to learn only with the right intentions. So if I'm not ready to learn with the right intentions, maybe I shouldn't learn Torah, right? That's what the Gemara says. What should I do? I'm not a person ready to learn Torah properly. I can't learn Lishma. I have an agenda. But if I'm going to learn Torah right away, it's going to fan my ego. If I'm going to learn Torah, I'm going to try to manipulate Torah. I bet it's better for me not to learn Torah because I'm not going to learn it properly. The Gemara says, no, that's not what you should do. You should learn it lo lishma. Why? Because mitoch shelo lishma ba lishma. Eventually, you'll learn it properly. That's the Gemara says. Why? Because atov shaboy machzil mutav. The Torah has a promise that eventually the Torah is going to get to you. Eventually, may not now, maybe next year, maybe not even this incarnation, but eventually your soul is going to be affected by Torah. The light that's in Torah is going to bring a person back. And the same thing applies with step by step. When you have Shmiras Halashon or Shmiras Anayim or Shmiras Machshava, when you're watching what you're thinking, what you're looking, what you're saying, you're not going to be in control every time. But eventually, when you start putting the little bricks and stones that start building a structure within your life, you're going to get more and more. It's going to get easier, and you're going to be more controllable for you to have a strategy for dealing with thoughts, and you'll be more successful than less. Again, it doesn't mean you can be perfect always, but at least you're going to start with a strategy somewhere. So therefore, when we learn the Ramak that talks about this, so it seems intense, it seems not possible, but by knowing that's what's expected, so then it gives us the power and empowers us that when it comes to choices that we have to make today, right now, it doesn't make a difference what I thought yesterday or what I'm going to think tomorrow or 5 minutes from now, but right now I could control not to think about this. So that's the second of the two of the 8. If anyone has any ideas on this that they want to contribute, now would be the time. If not, we could try to do the third one. Okay, so the third one is, we'll just do the third one. The third one's the Metzach. The Metzach is the forehead. Where do we find the forehead in Torah? We find the forehead in Torah by the tzitz. The tzitz is the show plate that the Kohen Gadol wears, right? So it says that the point of the showcase, whatever it's called, the tzitz that was on the forehead of the Kohen Gadol, was to bring back God's will towards the Jewish people. It was actually achieved atonement. Certain sins were fixed because of the tzitz that was on the forehead of the Kohen Gadol. But what's the connection? The idea is that the forehead represents functionality of the person. Let's see how he explains it. He doesn't really go into what the metzach is. For instance, there's also a person. It's also used in the negative when a person has chutzpah. It's usually say azus metzach. Azus metzach means a person who has chutzpah. Why do we talk about the forehead? Because it's like in your face. The forehead is not, a person's forehead is in the next person's face. So that's why the Gemara applies the azus metzach or azus panim. To have a chutzpah is usually referred to the forehead. So the third one is that you shouldn't give off a bad impression from your forehead. So mitzchoy, now again, we're talking about tools that a person has that we should emulate the way Hashem uses his metzach. So what's the metzach? The metzach should be lo yi by koishi klal. There shouldn't be any roughness that you give off from koishi is hard, from your forehead, which is, right? A person's forehead could tell a lot, Are they angry? Are they nervous? Right? There shouldn't be any kas, anger. Your forehead should give off an impression like the metzach of the keser, shiratz esakol. That everyone, when you see the person, you're giving a calming, accepting, inviting image. Even people that you approach that are angry, the calmness that you give off should calm them down. I just was telling someone yesterday's story that there was a famous chassid, Remendel Futefas, who was a survivor from communist Russia, sat 10 years in communism in a communist prison in Siberia. A very, very special person, also a person who's been around the world, seen the hardest of people. He sat 10 years in Siberia, but you don't need more than that. Very, very special Yid, passed away. Gimel Thomas, I believe, a year after the Rebbe. And he lived at the end, after he got out of Russia, he lived in Kfar Chabad. I think first in England, then he went to Kfar Chabad. So when the Rebbe came out with a campaign of putting on tefillin, he would go on the subways and put on tefillin with people. So the trains in Eretz Yisrael, to Tel Aviv, near Kfar Chabad. So he was once going, I think, with Rabbi Bolton, and I think that's his name. And they were going up and down the wagons to try to get people to put on tefillin. And Rabbi Bolton approaches one person who becomes extremely abusive and anti-religious and anti-tefillin, but very verbally angry, and really this person unapproachable in any way. So he backs off, but when he's going away from the train, from the wagon to the next wagon, he meets Reb Mendel going towards his wagon. He says, "Listen, Reb Mendel, I know you want to put on tefillin with everyone, but the guy sitting in the corner there, don't even approach him. You're wasting your time. He's really going to start abusing you, shouting at you. It's just really just don't even anger him." So Mendel, again, he sat 10 years in Siberia. There's very little that impresses him or gets him nervous. And when Rabbi Bolton comes back, he sees Reb Mendel putting on tefillin with this person. This person is putting on tefillin. So he's so shy. What happened? This guy was so unapproachable, impossible, so angry. And I think what happened was, if I remember correctly, Reb Mendel didn't even talk to him. He went over to him, gave him a hug. He gave him a hug, one hug, and the person broke. And that's what it means, that you calm other people. That his forehead gave off calmness. He didn't talk to him, he didn't argue with him, he didn't discuss it with him. He gave him a hug, and then he put him on film. And the person stretched out his arm, he put on film. So that's why he says, you see a person, someone else that's angry. You calm them down when they see your calmness. Because the rotzain that comes off, that emanates from the forehead, it constantly calms down gvuras when a person is being harsh, and sweetens them. Right, one hug sweetened this person, and the person put on tefillin. You could even calm down a gibor, a person who's a extremely strong person with anger. They're so angry inside. They're so the Ramak uses them a strong person of anger, a person who's just so angry about life. There's so much to be angry about, but how do you calm them down? Is you give off, not the argument, it's just the impression you give them. You calm them down. And you calm them with a good but he says one condition. The problem is that sometimes too passive, right? Everything's a joke. So you're not being effective either. So there has to be a balance. He says, it's not just that you're, a person who, you see someone angry, you start laughing. There has to be tremendous wisdom in how your calmness calms down anger. Be smart about it. Don't go over the limitations. And then you could be damaging. Sometimes inexperienced without a strategy, without really a plan, a chachma of what you're trying to accomplish with this person, right? You have to be sometimes trained to know how to use this calmness to be effective. Otherwise, you're just going to be passive, and then it's going to be more damaging. And be like Hashem, that his ratzon, which emulates from the forehead, that it comes from the chachma within the wisdom within the forehead. There's an art to being a calm person. There's an art to calming other people, and figure out that art within yourself, to know that not just to be a person who laughs everything off, but the purpose of it all is to be effective. And the effectiveness is, how do you know if you're effective? If you're actually calming other people, if you're a person that brings calmness around you, not just the person that walks in and says, okay, here's a joker, because it doesn't take anything serious. But you're able to use calmness in a strategy with an art that actually is effective, that other people, not only yourself, but other people are not angry, other people are not judgmental. When we shamiratza, and with the combination of the metzach, the calmness, with a strategy, with chachma, is going to cause calmness. And you're able to constantly bring peace to creation. Noach means peaceness, relaxation, tranquility, to brias, to other people. Because he says something else. That you can't be a mixed bag. You can't try to give off calmness, and inside of you there's another part of you that's all hard. Sometimes you're hard, and now you put up a smile. The principle that's sometimes very harsh with the kid, and then all of a sudden puts a smile up. Inconsistency is not going to be effective either. So he says, if you're very harsh in one way with people, in bnei adam, you can't just all of a sudden put on a smile and try to think you can be effective all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, why are you so nice all of a sudden? We see that very much in relationships with family. When there's an imbalance in how parents are. Sometimes they're very harsh, and then all of a sudden they want to be nice, and so it's confusing and actually brings resentment. It's not positive. And this is what he says. He finishes off a beautiful line. This is what the Mishnah tells us. It's a very important message. That you want to know what kind of person you are. You want to know what God thinks about you. What do others think about you? So it says, when people are calm, Noach, get calmness from you, then you should know God also has that same feeling as others feel about you. That's how God feels about you. And if you have to ask yourself sometimes, if you feel that you're being misunderstood, everyone is against me, I'm being misunderstood, I'm really a good person, and it could be true, but there's something in your message that's not coming across, that people are not feeling noyach about you. And if you think that, who cares? But if you do want to know what God thinks about you, the Mishnah says, do look around and see what other people think about you. Because if other people are happy around you, then God's happy around you. So you have to ask yourself, if you're not giving off this calmness, if you're a mixed bag, if you're kasha, and sometimes then you want to be very nice on the other side, and it's not being effective, and not everyone's a mental futafas, but there's a spectrum there as well. So not everyone is able to put on film with everyone, but there's also not, some people are anytime anyone sees them, they get upset. So you have to find the balance within yourself, and you should care what people think about you. People say, I don't care what people think about you. You should care a little bit about what people think about you, because if you want to know what God thinks about you, maybe you should think, maybe certain people you don't have to care about, and maybe in certain situations you don't have to care. But if any situation you're in, people are not happy to be around your presence, it's maybe time to analyze a little bit of what kind of message are you giving over. So that really completes the second and third of the midos. Again, he's helping us. In the next one, he goes into what things we listen to, what things we look at, what things we let in through our chotem. A chotem is a very powerful thing, which is the nostrils, what kind of face we give people, how we talk. And that's how he finishes off. And then he goes after that, he says, on page 69, I know you can't always do this. I know this is a perfect plan, but we're humans. And then he goes into strategy. What should you do in a situation where you know you have to be a certain way, but it's difficult to be that way. So, Laila Tov, everyone, thanks for joining. And Mr. we should continue. Take care.